So you have various possibilities in terms of what you use to make your cyanotypes. I've made enlarged negatives using Pictorico OHP printed on the inkjet printer. Of course, in the days of film, we would certainly use 4x5 film or larger and make cyanotypes with that. You could also make photograms with cyanotype, but I'm going to show you how to work with the print frames to expose your cyanotype using one of your enlarged negatives. So you can see these are some pretty heavy-duty snaps. Keep your fingers out of the way. The advantage, though, to them is that they really hold that wood down tight, and that's going to give you good registration for your photograph. This hinged back piece lifts up. You want to make sure the glass is clean. Just give it a wipe in between exposures if you are continually using it. Little minute amounts of dirt aren't usually a problem, but if it's a concern to you, you want to be careful with that. Now, about these negatives, there's going to be a notch code on full-size negatives. Here, we'll use this one. There's a little notch code, which just like on 4x5 sheet film, is going to be in the upper left-hand corner when it's facing you. So like right now, I'm holding it so that the emulsion is facing the camera. It's pretty easy to tell once it's been printed, but you want to put that in contact with the paper. So what I want to do is place that into my printing frame here, and then the paper, which I have allowed to dry thoroughly, I have in this bag here, and you can tear it down to fit the actual frame if you maybe made it a little too big, like I think I did. I have another piece of it over here. Yeah, this was that big sheet that I coated. So I can pretty easily size that down to fit my image. But of course I will lose my big brush strokes on that sheet doing that. That's okay, you just need to keep that in mind, that if you're working with this frame, you need to make your stuff 8x10 or smaller. Another possibility is to use any sort of sheet of glass to hold your negative in contact with the paper. And so I think I do have a piece of glass that is big enough for this particular sheet. Ideally the backing would be black, but I don't think it's going to make a terribly big difference. So I could also print this way, just setting it down, emulsion side, emulsion to emulsion. Think of it that way. And then just any old piece of glass. You can even temporarily disassemble a picture frame in your home for this if you need to. Plexi works fine as well. But as long as I keep that tightly sandwiched and place it out in the sun without moving it, this is fine. There's nothing super special about the clamps except that, like I said, you do want it in tight contact. So that's one way of dealing with larger paper than what you have available for this frame. So I'm going to set that aside and actually work with a slightly smaller negative and a smaller piece of paper for the purposes of this one. Let's take this negative and place that in the middle of the glass, and we'll put our paper behind it. You can keep pressure on the back and flip it over to make sure that you have your image lined up within the brush strokes the way you would like. It may be that there's sort of an accent area of the brush stroke that you want to correspond a little bit with your image. So, you can give that a little bit of thought. Just keep pressing so that the glass doesn't fall out when you get it back the way up that you like. Now this, back here, you're going to lower it into place. hopefully without scooting it too much. And then, like I said, keeping your fingers clear, for God's sake. Switch these guys over. And now it's very tightly sandwiched in place, and it's ready to go out into the sun. And then finally, I thought, just for the sake of history, I would show you. This is a smaller, really old frame. Turns out my great-great-grandfather was a photographer, and so these, the little leather hinge has kind of come from together, but this was made for printing on, obviously, smaller paper, like 5x7. So I was thinking that maybe rather than print this as a panorama, I'll tear it down so that I can make a print in here today. And to tear these down, if you want a deckled edge, just find a ruler or something, and you can pull up by it. Remember, you want to kind of minimize, if you can, how much handling of the actual coated paper surface you do. So you could wear gloves for this if it means that you're going to be otherwise hanging on to the paper. What I'm going to do to size this, I'm not cheap. Take the glass right out of that frame. I think rather than have one side show the edges and the other not, I'm just going to sort of take evenly off of here. I think that's going to make a little better resulting piece. So I'm going to put that back in my frame. Whew, that's very dirty. Very dirty. What did I do with my little towel? It's gone. We'll use my shirt. Super high quality. There. Alright. And so I had selected this negative. So again, if it were 4x5 film, we want emulsion to emulsion. So we want to hold it so the emulsion's facing us and place it into the frame face down so that the emulsion is continuing to face us. There's the little notch code for your reference. Okay. Emulsion to emulsion. And so showing you this, part of it, my motivation is to just show you that, like, this long brass springy hinge or pivot is made to go into little slots that were carved into the back of this, and that's how that stays registered nice and tightly. This finally is one that I made myself because I was pretty horrified at the price of commercial printing frames. That one that I showed you, this guy, that's like $100. So this was my little very limited wood shop solution. It's a piece of wood that has been sanded a little bit, filed, so that it's kind of like an airplane propeller or a lawnmower blade. It's a little bit pivoted on each side. And then I made these little flippy things out of some scrap material. And then, just something squishy and black. You could even just use a couple layers of felt. This happens to be some old wetsuit material, so it's nice and spongy and really pushes nicely against the paper. So for this one, I'm going to make another print with my 4x5 film. These are neat. These are negatives from a workshop I did in Tuscany under Professor Gary Hubrex from my undergraduate school experience at Colorado State. And the place in the picture is Santa Chiara, a little school in Tuscany where I was first introduced really to these non-silver processes. We did palladium prints out in the sun in that courtyard, so it seemed like a really great one to use for this demo. Seemed fitting. So once you've got your stuff framed up and ready to go, you're going to take it outside. How do you like this local color? Showing you my place. All right, so we've got nice midday sun here. I'm just going to place this down And now the sun is doing its thing. And so is the dog over there. She's going to talk to us, I'm sure. So you want to think, obviously, about not putting your shadow in the picture. Or, I suppose, if you wanted to create photograms, you could also think about that. You could certainly do that. You can see it's already turning pretty quickly, right? What cyanotype is a what we call printing out process. Got a little stuff on there. And so the cool thing about it is we can actually check the progress of the print periodically with frames like this, which have this hinged back. Again, if I turn this over, it's not the end of the world because the print is in nice registration, and what's happening right now is it's just not getting sunlight. No big deal. But the reason this is hinged is that, if you think about it, this is super tight back here, holding my negative tightly against my paper. And so if I undo these clips and flip this back, I can gently lift up and examine to see how much printing has happened. So we're going to do that in a minute, and I'll show you what this printing out business means. Here we are back indoors. Remember, it's really UV light, ultraviolet light, that most, has the biggest effect on these things. So, working in here with fluorescent lights on is not going to hurt it. Doesn't matter really which side opens up. You can see it's got a little thing a little bumper on one side that could be on either side. It doesn't matter. So we're just opening up two opposite ones. In fact, you know what? It's easier to open this side because, duh, I've got this to lift by. And so now I can lift this back and I can examine my picture and look and see. I might have really toasted this thing. You know what? I'm going to check the other side. I have the feeling I got carried away, y'all. Oh, no, I didn't. I just picked it up in a shadow area. Okay, so do you see that, and maybe if I can zoom this in from my silly selfie stick view, we'll bring it to the camera. You can see certainly the image happening up here. You can also even start to see cloud formation showing in this yellow highlight area. And certainly the dark blue of the structure, this is that Nichols barn as it was being taken down. That's actually looking pretty good. Starting to see detail in a sky that was this dark makes me think that we're pretty much there. So at this point, I'm going to actually take this out and bring it over for processing. You're going to love processing because it's super easy. Just leave your negative like it is. Take your image along with you and join me at the sink. Alright, nothing but water, y'all. I would just place it gently face down in the water, and gently flowing water is what you want to start this process. And you'll see the cyan material start to come out of the print and turn the color of the water a little bit greenish. But you definitely don't want it like face up with crazy amounts of water just blasting over the surface of the image. That's gonna ruin things. Really, I should put on gloves to handle it in this water because, of course, the water is removing the cyanotype material, and it's not really great for you. I am going to be a bad example, though, because I'm holding the camera with my left hand, and I can't reach gloves from here. So do as I say, not as I do. You go get your gloves. Me, I'm going to pour off the water, and I'm going to lift the print by a known edge with no design on it. And show you our awesome little image, which actually is not that overexposed at all. That's not bad. So, if, you know, with longer washing, allowing it to just have the water run gently on it, we'll clear out the rest of the yellow in those sky areas. But you can see, as dark as those forms were in the rafters and things that are up there, there's still some detail in those things. They did not just block up into total black. This will darken as it dries, as some of the Prussian blue kind of oxidizes on there. You can even speed that up with a little bath of hydrogen peroxide and water, just the same old hydrogen peroxide you get from the store, mixed with a percentage of water. I'll include that in my notes to you. That's it. Just let that chill out. Take what you learned from this one and apply it to the next one. Here we are at the print that I left while we went and processed the other ones, and you can see now that the white areas are really pretty thoroughly clear. It's looking pretty light. I'm guessing that I'm going to want to reprint this, but again, you know, withhold judgment until it's dry. You could use a handheld, you know, hair dryer on this if you wanted to. I'm actually just going to hang it up on the same clothesline that I hung it on when I had coated it in the first place. Once you have finished washing your cyanotypes to the point that the white areas look clear, no yellow in them, then you can just hang them up with clothespins and allow them to air dry. Or you could use a hair dryer.